Mattel has come up with a very interesting new product, presenting Martyr Barbie. This Barbie comes with her very own tiny violin and her very own sword to fall on. So today we're talking about the Martyr syndrome. Basically the need to fix, to rescue, and most importantly, to self-sacrifice. Let's discuss. Hello everybody, welcome. My name is Laura and I want to help you learn to love your demons and reparent yourself. Get in, loser. We're going inward. Today's case study is Jane Nichols from the movie 27 Dresses. And she's going to help us understand this pattern. She's going to show us where it comes from and what need it serves. So quick rundown of the plot. Okay, so Jane loses her mother at a very young age. This means that all of the responsibilities in her household, emotional and otherwise, including taking care of her younger sister Tess, is now on her shoulders. Her dad's not going to be any help, because he has what we call dad in a rom-com-itis.
Last night, I actually had a dream. My flour sack was abducted and the kidnappers started sending me muffins in the mail.
Like, how did he keep himself alive before getting married? What? We're gonna get into it. She also develops this passion for weddings. She's like a perpetual bridesmaid for all her friends. Pretty much doing all the heavy lifting of the wedding planning herself.
Yeah, they just finished hemming it.
And Jane, thanks again for arranging everything.
And then her sister comes into town and she gets engaged to her boss, who Jane also has a crush on. I say crush, not feelings. Talk about it. Oh, and there's some guy who wants to write about her under false pretenses and ends up being a love interest. Yeah. Okay. I will give this movie one huge credit. They do such a good job at showing us where Jane's obsession with weddings came from. So, she's at a wedding with her dad and her sister. So her sister's like, I have to go to the bathroom, and dad's a deer in headlights as usual.
Come on, Tess, let's go.
He kind of looks to Jane like, could you just take care of this? You know, like, you could see how he's reinforcing this behavior. So they go on over and there's some drama in the ladies' room. The bride's dress is torn or whatever. And Jane has this aha moment. She finds a creative solution to this problem. The bride is so happy. She's like, you saved the day. Why don't you hold the train with me? And this little girl is beaming. She's a star. She's basically crowd surfing on that altar, let's be real. And everything kind of clicks for her.
And that was the moment.
She realized, this is how I get my needs met. Let's kind of unpack what just happened here. So like we said, she's kind of burdened with all these responsibilities at home. And here's another similar situation. Someone has a problem and she solves it. But this time, she gets appreciated.
You saved the day.
She gets all this positive attention and recognition for what she did. So it kind of clicks for her. Okay, I am only noticed and appreciated when I'm useful, when I do something for someone else. Because this is a need that she's clearly starved of. Because her dad's emotionally absent. And I'm gonna guess he was this way before the wife died, but I'm sure the grief has made it worse. And she has a younger sister who clearly needs more attention and guidance because she's literally a baby. So this is the only way that she has any security in a social setting of, okay, this is how I can carve a place for myself in society, in a social group. This is how I can get attention.
I was 8 when I discovered my purpose in life.
Because the first 8 years are the formative years. This is when our personality, how we think, how we perceive things just settle. And we're gonna see exactly how this manifests into her adulthood. So, fast forward to adulthood. What is Jane like as an adult? So she's an assistant to this guy, towards whom she has this unspoken / unrequited crush? Question mark?
Did you put that breakfast burrito on my desk?
I just thought you might be hungry.
That's why I love you.
I love you too.
Look at her face. That's the same level of joy she felt as a kid when she was asked to hold the train. So you can see why she keeps doing this. And as we saw in the beginning, weddings are her life. When she's not constantly a bridesmaid to her friends, and when I say bridesmaid, I mean unpaid event planner, because she does literally everything, she's reading about them.
Wedding vows, yay. Come to mama.
And she's surrounded by people who need her for everything. Her dad, we already established that. Her friends. She literally does everything for them.
And Jane, thanks again for arranging everything.
Her boss, oh my god, the boss. We're gonna talk about him separately in a second, but this guy, George, we're gonna have a little montage, a tour of how he's just perpetually unable. Just unable.
You got some champagne glasses and a bottle of Cristal.
Good. All right. Yeah, it's kind of like whatever I need, she takes care of. I used to be a vegan, but, you know, it was too much of a hassle. Yeah, I even dropped my dry cleaning slip off on her desk today. But, you know, it was an emergency, so.
Let's go dancing.
Yeah, no, I'll go. Okay. Yeah, but I gotta warn you, I'm a terrible dancer. Maybe, would you mind again?
Nope.
Now, I hate to ask you for another favor, but I need to print up my speech for tonight, and I cannot find the file.
You forgot your wallet.
Oh. I can always count on you. You never say no, which I love.
Honestly, George is basically 3 children in a trench coat. I refuse to believe he's an adult man because, wow. Wow. Now, this is no coincidence. Because as someone who's made helping people her entire identity, naturally she's going to attract people who are needy, who want someone to kind of take care of them, to rescue them. So that's kind of why she's constantly surrounded by people who want something from her, including Kevin. We're going to talk more about this toilet water of a man later, but he literally weasels his way into her life because he wants to do an exploitative piece on her. But yeah, he's attracted to her because he wants something. He's never once offered anything back. He's taking. So if her constant mode is being a giver, she's going to attract takers. That's just how it works. And what's interesting is that nobody does anything for her.
Hey, you haven't seen my Filofax anywhere, have you?
No.
Oh, did you get those catalog pages in for George?
No.
Okay, no worries.
She wants you to be a bridesmaid.
You are shitting me. No, I won't do it. On principle.
None of these efforts are requited. Like, yeah, you've got the gag at the end where all the brides got to be her bridesmaids on her day. Fine. But generally, she's kind of on her own.
Well, what about you? You don't have any needs?
No, I don't. I'm Jesus.
You could have 2 kids in the same house, but they're gonna have very different childhoods. So if Jane was the caregiver child, the child who had to grow up too soon and take on all this stuff, who was Tess in the family? So here's the thing about rescuing. Someone has to be helpless to be rescued. Okay, so Jane had to pick up slack around the house, and she's managed to find some satisfaction, knowing that, okay, these people depend on me, that gives me security. In doing this, she seriously disempowers her sister by making her sister need her. What do I mean by this? When someone's always doing things for you, especially when you're young and you're still developing as a person, you're not going to be incentivized to learn to do anything yourself. Because you're like, okay, I'm going to rely on this person. And this puts you in a kind of vulnerable position, because if that person's not there, whether it's because they're unwilling or they're physically absent to provide this thing for you, you are helpless. This is what you know. You've never experienced a situation where you can trust yourself and attempt to achieve the thing. Why don't we take an example?
She's my kid sister. I taught her how to tell time, how to steam flounder in the dishwasher. I mean, I practically raised her.
So you went by the flower shop.
Yep.
And ordered the favors.
Uh-huh.
What about the invitation mock-ups?
Done. It's the pot she's going to cook my mother's Christmas roast in.
Oh, Tess cooks?
All right, well, I'm going to cook it, but Tess will be there. You don't know Tess. She's going to want me to do everything. I'm not going to just be her maid of honor. I'm going to be taking care of everything. We're getting married in 3 weeks. 3 weeks?
Oh, Jane, I know you can pull it together quickly.
And I love this moment specifically. This kind of sums up their dynamic. Okay, so she walks into this room, these guys lower the thing that says, will you marry me? And there's Jane, there's George, so this is a bit overwhelming to her. And her first instinct is to be like, Jane, what is this?
Jane, what's going on?
You know, like a child looks to their parent when they don't know what's going on or when they need an emotional security blanket, you know? And that is why Tess has low self-esteem. She sees herself as kind of incompetent or incapable, and we see this throughout.
I was trying to be someone he could respect.
Really? George? You sure?
You forgot your wallet.
Oh.
That George. And to make up for this low self-esteem, she's a compulsive liar. This is a way for her to overcompensate for the fact that she doesn't feel good enough. So that's why she Frankenstein monsters a bunch of traits that she thinks George might like.
You're a vegetarian?
Uh-huh.
I actually love all that hiking and biking and climbing.
She also lies because she's afraid of taking responsibility and or facing consequences. Again, doesn't believe she can handle it.
George is in Telluride. Who's in here?
No one. Let's talk in the halls. Jane, he was looking for a part-time job.
Cleaning the apartment.
Hey, Pedro, my little secret, okay?
She has no agency. As someone who is dependent on others for everything, things are done to her, but she's never the doer, up until the very end.
You want to know the real reason why I decided to stay in New York? I got fired from my job. Rodolfo dumped me.
George is the one who approaches her, and then her sister's the one who reveals the lies. So she's just kind of very passive, because again, she doesn't have the self-esteem enough to actively pursue things. Until the end.
I started designing my own line of handbags, and I'm completely broke, but that's okay.
And finally, she is selfish.
How could you let this happen to me? He called me Bridezilla in the New York frickin' Journal. I could tear him apart limb from limb. Please say this and only this. We don't want to be embarrassed again.
And the reason for that is because she has little to no empathy. Now, empathy is something we develop as we experience hardships. You need to feel pain to empathize when you see it in someone else.
You know, I don't have that many girlfriends. I don't know why. Okay, fine, I know why.
The bottom line is that she's just unable to connect to anybody emotionally. She's just focused on the self. And just to be clear, I'm not saying that she's never had problems, but she's never really been accountable for anything. You know, if you always have somebody who's guaranteed going to deal with your shit, you're not gonna learn the consequences. You're not gonna emotionally go through the process of processing what happened, your impact on others. So that's kind of what that's about. So what's the deal with weddings? You know, obviously it's a trope of rom-coms, but in our case study, it's deeper than that. I'm gonna give you 3 reasons. 1, a wedding was the inciting incident. The very first time Jane experienced value as a person, she felt that she had a place in society and she was appreciated, was when she was at a wedding and she helped out a bride. So, in her child mind, the math was, okay, when I'm useful to people, especially on weddings, I will be noticed, I will be loved, and I will have the irreplaceable security. So there's a strong association there. That's how emotions work. They tangle the event and the feelings together, so you cannot have one without the other. 2, this is the only way, the only safe way Jane is going to experience love as an emotionally avoidant person. Much like her crush on George, she gets to be in proximity to love from a safe distance. You know, she gets to pine after the idea of love, but you know, as an onlooker, there is no threat as an audience member, you know. 3, so if you could tell in the movie, the Nichols sisters are obsessed with their parents' wedding. Like, it is almost deified.
Mom was my age, you know? I think it would be so special if I did a wedding just like Mom and Dad.
Your mother would have wanted you to have it.
Thank you.
Like, Jane basically has an altar of that day in her living room. It's sanctified. Here's my theory. I think them talking about their mom's wedding, it's a way for them to keep the memory of her alive, but I think it's also the only way that they were able to connect with their dad. So we established that dad is emotionally dead inside. He's just blocked. He doesn't know how to process, feel, or express his stuff. And I think after the death of the mom, this was exasperated. He had 5 more walls of blockages. So I'm imagining this scenario when they go up to dad and they're like, tell us about mom again, tell us about the wedding, because they were so young. So I think that was the only way that dad could muster up even like a sliver of emotion for them. And through that, they feel connected to him. We're taking the gloves off for this one. It's gonna get real. So Jane has 2 love interests, George and Kevin. Let's start with George. Why does she like him? We already established that he's very needy.
You can always count on you. You never say no, which I love.
That should provide Jane with a lot of security, because here you have this person who's going to be 200% dependent on you for everything. And honestly, I think this is because he also grew up having someone do everything for him. And I'm gonna guess it was his mom, to be honest with you. Which is why he and Tess were kind of drawn to each other, because they're both the same person if you think about it. Let's move on to Kevin. we need to talk about Kevin.
Look, this woman has been in 7 weddings.
So?
This year. She was in 2 on Saturday alone. For George and Tess? Oh, good God.
Kevin sucks, honestly. Here's the deal. He's trying really hard to present this persona of he's like the cynical edgelord and he doesn't care about anything, and weddings are just so gross and corporate. Ew.
Isn't one wedding bad enough? Love means slowly losing your mind. It's a whole lot of ritual for something that's got about a 50-50 shot of making it out of the gate.
Do you actually believe in love and marriage? Or are you actually a cynic who knows how to spin romantic crap for girls like me?
I didn't follow that at all. Didn't follow that at all. Didn't follow that at all.
And then we get his villain origin story.
Do you have your own fancy wedding that your wife left you or something?
Bingo. With my roommate from college, by the way. So I think you get an extra bingo for that. Someone who has no insight whatsoever into herself. You nailed me right on the head.
Oh my god, what an asshole. Like, that was too vulnerable for Kevin, so now he has to go back to insulting her. That's his comfort zone. Gross. He basically wants to write an article kind of making fun of her, like, what a freak. She goes to all these weddings and she's always a bridesmaid. Ew, lol. Here's the thing. He's been to more weddings than she has. Like, in a way, you could say they both work in the same industry. Like, he's a journalist and he covers weddings. And she's like an unpaid event planner. So she also works in the wedding circuit. So what's the deal? And to be honest, Kevin's misogynistic.
You said your name was Kevin.
Well, I use Malcolm for the byline, so I don't get stalked by the crazy brides. By the crazy brides. Crazy brides.
And when he writes his article, he paints Tess as a bridezilla.
Tess is cast as the overbearing, overindulged bride-to-be.
Anyone would be stressed. You try planning an event for 100 people. Also, isn't it hypocritical to criticize an industry that you're profiting off of? And you can make the argument of, oh, he doesn't want to write about that anymore. He wants to write about important things. But even his expose is literally about the wedding industry. Let's be honest, Kevin's the I threw it on the ground guy.
Some poser hands me cake at a birthday party. Happy birthday to the ground!
Okay, so Jane and Kevin are pretty similar in that they spend all their time at weddings because this is their unmet need to feel loved. But for them, the safest way to do that is to keep it at a distance. The only difference is Kevin has this thin veneer of pretending he wants to mock or expose weddings for being corporate and lame.
And I think you love weddings so much because you'd rather focus on other people's Kodak moments than make memories of your own.
This is such an example of like attracts like.
Wonder Twin powers, activate!
When he gets caught, he's like,
I told my editor not to run it. Nobody reads that section anyway.
Here's why that's a pathetic attempt at an apology. Your editor did not make you write this piece. This was your idea. You saw a woman go to 2 weddings and you're like, lol, what a loser. It was your choice to paint her in this unflattering way. What is this picture? And you're the one who lied the entire time and had all these opportunities to be like, listen, I'm not writing about your sister, I'm writing about you. Yikes, David. And since we're here, we're just gonna continue our tour of why the men in this movie just suck. So we've got the douche friend who's just there to degrade women just to make our main guy seem just incrementally better by comparison.
And you're not getting laid?
You mean 2 women who are about to get married?
Yeah.
Also, George is a bit of a sleaze. So this scene, there really is no justifying for this scene. Jane sabotages her sister's wedding. She kind of just explodes with years of repressed rage and is like, my sister's an absolute lying piece of trash. George, you deserve better kind of thing. Yikes. Obviously that splits up their engagement and Tess is upset. So the next day she talks to George and she's like, I'm sorry man, I was out of line. And he's like, nah, it's cool, you know. But then Jane quits and he's like, I've had this crush on you, but I'm like, enough's enough, I gotta go. And he kisses her.
That's what's acceptable and appropriate for this.
What are you doing, man? And then Jane's like, I don't really feel anything. And he's like, how about one more try? Should we try again? What the fuck?
Maybe we can give it another try.
Yeah. Okay.
Yikes. Like, even if you guys had a potential as a couple, you just broke off an engagement with her sister. And honestly, a bit of a tangent, but that kind of explains his expectations in a marriage. And this is all implicit, this is just my interpretation. I'm gonna reference two things. First is when Jane is talking to Kevin in the store, and she's like, you know, this is the pot that Tess is gonna make the casserole in. And obviously it turns out that Tess doesn't know how to cook, but there's that bit of expectation there of, you know, she's gonna be making the meals. And the second thing is the Pedro cleaning bit. At this point, Tess had moved in with George, and I think it was kind of expected of her to do the cleaning. And obviously she doesn't want to do that, so she bounced that responsibility onto Pedro. She manipulated Pedro to do it. So I'm getting a very clear picture as to the kind of woman that George wants, which is someone to do everything for him, and that's kind of what we've been seeing so far. That's his whole rhetoric. My jimmies are rustled, man. I'm upset. Honestly, the only man in this movie doesn't suck is Pedro. Pedro's the best. He's kind, he's compassionate, he stands up for Tess, even though she was humiliated and abandoned by everybody. Is Hitch the most decent rom-com in terms of its depiction of men? Because Hitch as a movie and a character seems the most genuine. But then there's this scene where Hitch tells Albert to kind of, I don't know, confront this woman, kind of humble her to get her attention.
If you want to be taken seriously as an adult, I suggest you start taking yourself seriously as an adult instead of asking for permission to invest your own money from a boardroom full of your daddy's golf buddies.
Listen, if you want to be taken seriously, don't ask your board of advisors for financial advice. It's not a perfect movie, but comparatively it seems to call these men out for their bullshit. Then we get a confrontation between the sisters. This is important, this is the bulk, and this kind of shows how their patterns are playing off of each other. And how the dad makes it worse. He cannot handle big emotions. So when there's a fight in the house, he wants to squash it immediately. But he tells Jane, the people pleaser out of the two kids, to be like, well, I don't care what you do, I need you to end this right now, just talk to her, oh, everything's gonna be fine, just do it.
You two are sisters, you have got to work this out.
I'm telling you, she doesn't want to talk to me.
No, she loves you. No, she loves you.
So there's a bit of manipulation, there's encouragement of please do this, you don't want to see me upset, do you? Kind of vibe. And at the same time, he's completely absent from it. So not only does he put all the burden on Jane, regardless of who's right or what happened, but he also leaves. Like, he wants nothing to do with it. And I'm pretty sure this is how it played out in childhood.
This is between you and her. I'm out of this.
Jane is like, you never take responsibility for yourself, and that is true, because she's never been in a position to do that.
You're not taking any responsibility for the fact that you lied to George.
But then Tess refutes with a lot of good points. She's like,
just admit it, you resent me because you were the one who always had to braid my hair, go shopping for my prom dress.
The thing about martyrs is that they don't rescue people because they want to. They do it because they feel like they have to. It's a means to an end.
You don't know Tess. She's gonna want me to do everything. I'm not gonna just be her maid of honor. I'm gonna be taking care of everything.
And the end is usually that unmet need. But most people don't really want to be rescued. They don't want someone constantly intervening. So when the martyr does not get that sense of appreciation, they're gonna feel resentful and maybe a bit of self-pity. And sometimes this aura of self-pity does manage to get some sympathy from people. And that could be how the martyr makes up for the lack of appreciation. So you can see how this is a vicious loop. The martyr goes above and beyond to get that appreciation, to, quote, earn their place in their group. And this makes the other person feel disempowered and resentful for that. So they continue to be cold or withhold that appreciation. And this makes the martyr try harder. And so the cycle continues, and that is the relationship between Jane and Tess. So I really appreciate that Tess is calling it like it is, of, you didn't have to do that.
You've been trying to take care of me ever since Mom died.
I had to.
No.
But if I don't, then...
Tessa learned to stand up on her own 2 feet. Jane has this resistance to letting Tess do that because remember, this means she's not needed, which means she might go back to feeling unseen again. This is how defense mechanisms work. So let's just recap and conclude this tour. Okay, so we develop ulterior ways to have our needs met, right? And this is what we call defense mechanisms or coping mechanisms. So Jane felt like she was unseen, but suddenly discovered that she has value. She has a place in her family when she's able to provide something. So she learns that this is the only way that I can have my need met. Need for attention, security, appreciation. Jane, in pursuing this constant need to rescue and to intervene, disempowers her sister, who is now completely dependent on other people. She has low self-esteem, and she feels like she has to compensate for it by lying, by making herself seem like something she isn't. So near the end, she realizes that there's no escaping feelings, she has to deal with them, and Tess realizes that she has to take accountability. And then you have the men. You have Kevin, who's cynical, but secretly he's a romantic. He hasn't dealt with this stuff and doesn't respect women. And George is completely helpless as 3 children in a trench coat. He constantly needs a female figure to do everything for him. And he's a little desperate to get married, to be honest. So Tess tries to fill that role by lying about who she is. And Jane does that by just overcompensating and constantly, providing things for him. Well, that was our very long tour. It was a little bit salty because honestly, I think rom-coms promote really unhealthy archetypes and they need to be called out. But otherwise, I hope you enjoyed yourself. I'll catch you next time.